Good morning. I am in a state of what my wife would call unnecessary excitement because I've discovered a thing called Notebook LM from Google, which is just amazing. Every now and then you get blown away by something on the internet. I remember watching my first football match on an iPhone, the first time I tried Spotify, the first time I had to go on Shazam, all just amazing. How on earth can that work? And then we get Notebook LM, where you can make a podcast in seconds. You find some information, you tell it what you want to podcast on, and poof, there you go. It creates one in no time at all. So how is this useful? It's very realistic. If you've got a large document that you've got to go through, you can just create a podcast to that and listen to it while you're cooking or driving or something else. And it's just a different way of accessing information. Well, how is that of any use to teaching? So we start off with a quick search for Google LM. You'll need a Google account and be signed into it. It may well be that Google are spying on you, but my life is not that interesting, so I don't really mind. So first of all, we need to go into Create New, which you can see at the top here. And then we're going to go Paste Text, which is where you put in the text that you want to use in order to create the podcast. So the text that I want is already in Google Gemini. I've asked Gemini to write a 200-word account of the Great Fire of London and explained in the prompt that the audience is a class of year 4 children in England and that they'll be using this as a starting point for their topic and in order to gather information. So we copy the text back to Notebook LM and click Copy Text, paste copied text and then Insert, and now we have the text that we want. If you click on Notebook Guide, you'll see that it gives you a summary and suggested questions. The area that we're looking for is the deep dive conversation, and we can custom this to make it appropriate to use in the classroom. I'm asking it to create a podcast that's of interest to children who are aged 9. The podcast is an introduction for them on the Great Fire of London and will be used as the start of a topic. In order to maintain the children's interest, I'm asking it to please ask rhetorical questions using the children's names, and I suggest that it uses each name at least once, which it didn't do, but never mind. And then we can create the audio overview. And at this point, I've paused proceedings because it does take a little while and I want to keep us within 5 minutes. So I'm going to let you know at the end how long I cut out so you know how long it takes to create the podcast. It's not long. So here we go, we are back 90 seconds later, just 90 seconds, so not really worth cutting it out. But in those 90 seconds, it has created a podcast that lasts for 6 minutes 20, which you can play to a group of children as an introduction to any area of learning which you wish to engage their attention. So I'm going to play you some snippets of it so you can get an idea of exactly what it does and why I'm so excited about it.
Hey everybody, welcome to our deep dive today. It's going to be a good one.
It is a good one.
We're going to be talking about something really, really exciting.
Oh, yeah.
A fire.
Yeah?
Robert, have you ever seen like a really, really big fire?
I bet you have.
Yeah, like a bonfire or
campfire
or something. Yeah. But can you imagine, Robert, a fire so big that it burns down almost an entire city? That's what happened in London way back in 1666.
Yeah, so back then things were very different from the way they are now.
Right, like how were things different back then?
Well, Kyle, can you imagine a city where all the houses were made of wood?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like entirely made of wood.
Even the roofs. So the fire started in the bakery, and then what happened?
Well, Jasmina, picture this. The fire quickly jumped from the bakery to the houses that were nearby.
Uh-oh.
And there was a really strong wind that day.
Oh, no.
And that helped the flames to spread even faster.
Oh, no.
And, you know, the streets back then were really, really narrow.
So there's just no way to stop it.
Yeah, it was almost impossible to stop the fire from jumping across the street to the houses on the other side.
Okay, so there you have it, about 6 minutes of introductory spiel for the Great Fire of London, tailored for your class and aimed directly at your children. If you listen all the way through, you'll notice that it does repeat itself quite a lot, which is probably not a bad thing in terms of overlearning and getting the facts into the children's heads. You probably wouldn't want to spend 2 hours in the pub with those two people. In addition to the podcast, Notebook LM gives you a series of resources. There's suggested questions. As with all AI, I would treat these as a guide. but as a useful first draft, it's a good starting point. You can also generate frequently asked questions, which can be discussed after the podcast or used as a basis of a learning activity. There's a study guide that can be used as a quiz, a suggested table of contents, which can be used as a basis of a PowerPoint, which I'll look at in a future video. There's a timeline, which is obviously of use because this is a history topic. And finally, there's a briefing document which gives an outline of the content of the podcast. So I'm going to leave you with a snapshot from a podcast that I made to try and fool Gemini into believing that the moon was made of cheese. I put in a fake article that I had written, and the chatbot was not convinced to begin with. I had to insist that this was real news and that it had been reported in The Guardian, which seemed to impress it. So it created a podcast that was factually presented, which made me think it had been taken in. But the briefing notes then clearly were quite sceptical still and demanded further investigation. So there may be a chance that learners are forced by these tools into researching things more deeply than they would have done if they'd just gone and looked on the internet. Here's hoping.
Welcome back, Deep Divers. You all wanted to hear more about this recent discovery on the moon.
Mm-hmm.
And get this, scientists have found that a portion of the moon is made of cheese.
So, The Guardian, for those who don't know, it's a pretty reputable news source known for, its serious journalism. And they are indeed reporting on a remarkable discovery about the moon's composition.
Okay.
The Guardian article states that analysis of lunar samples indicates that 12% of the moon's mass
12%.
is composed of a substance bearing a striking resemblance to cheese.
So cheese. 12% of the moon is cheese.
The majority is actually some sort of, they think it's goat cheese.
Oh, cheese.
But with traces of rat milk.
Rat milk. Ugh. That doesn't sound very appetizing.
Yeah, not exactly something you'd want on a...